Now that we know how to find the equation of the line given several different situations, now we want to look at what to do if they tell us to find a line that is parallel or if they tell us to find a line that is perpendicular. The first thing we need to do is clarify definitions. Parallel means two lines that do not intersect. Perpendicular does not mean that the lines cross. A lot of you guys are under the understanding that any two lines that cross are considered perpendicular. Perpendicular lines means that they intersect to form a 90-degree angle. This is very, very important. Okay? The symbol for perpendicular is an upside down T, and the reason for that is because it does create these 90-degree angles. The symbol for parallel is two parallel lines. And again, parallel means that they do not, I'm going to put don't because I can't fit it in, intersect. So if we were looking at this picture below and it says to compare the lines A and B, do we think those would be parallel, perpendicular, or neither? And we're going to look at what that says for the slopes. Then it says A and D, so here's A and here's D, and we would have to decide if we think this is a 90-degree angle. And then it says A and C. Well, here's A, and then here's C, and again, we know they intersect, but we would have to decide if we think that this is a right angle. And there's a mathematical way to prove that it is a right angle. So let's talk about the slope of line A. Again, remember we're going to be doing this using our rise over run. So this is the up and down compared to the left and right. So if I go to line A and I pick a point, so let's say I start here and I count how to get to the next point, I go up 1, over 1, 2. So I get a slope of 1/2. So now you find the slope of line B. And then we have the slope of C. So if I talk about the slope of C, I start here. Oh, that's D. Sorry, I would start here. And then to get to, let's start lower. Let's start down here. And to get to the next point, I go up 1, 2, and right 1. So the slope of C would be 2 over 1. And then you find the slope of D. Good. So now let's compare those lines that they told us to compare. Let's look at A and B. Well, A and B do not intersect. Therefore, we think that they are parallel. So if we think they're parallel, let's compare the slopes. So the slope of line A is 1/2. And then if you found it correctly, sorry, the slope of line B is also 1/2. So we want to go ahead and make a conjecture, an educated guess about what that means. So lines that are parallel have slopes that are the same. So again, we could say that these are parallel lines. So now let's look at A and D. Here's A, here's D. This is the one that we said we weren't sure if this was 90 degrees or not, but let's compare the slopes. So the slope of A is still 1/2. The slope of D, if you found it correctly, should have been -2 over 1. So in order to see if these are 90 degrees or not, what we would do is check if they multiply to make number -1. Multiply to equal -1. If they do, then these lines are perpendicular. So we can put in our calculator 1/2 times -2/1. And if we put that in, it does come out to be -1. So these would be perpendicular lines. Now, the other way to check this is by doing what we say is called negative reciprocals. So look down here at the bottom, and it says lines that are perpendicular have slopes that are negative reciprocals, which I'm about to explain. And you can put in parentheses opposite flip, or slopes that multiply to equal -1. So let's look at opposite flip, okay, or a negative reciprocal. If I take 1/2 and I flip it over, so boop, I get 2/1. So now comes the opposite part. This was positive, so then this is negative. So 1/2, the negative reciprocal, means I make positive to negative and I flip it over, which is why I said opposite flip. So again, that's two ways that you can check to see if two lines are perpendicular by looking and comparing the slopes. If the slopes are negative reciprocals, or if they multiply to equal -1, that's your telltale sign that they are perpendicular. If they are exactly the same, that's your telltale sign that they are parallel. So now let's look at A and C. The slope of A is 1/2, and the slope of C is 2/1. Well, if we look, they do intersect. But if we weren't sure if they were perpendicular or not, we could do our tests. So the first thing we could do would be to multiply 1/2 times 2/1. If I do that, my answer is 1, not -1. So this means they are not perpendicular. And then 1/2 and 2/1 are definitely not the same, so they are not parallel. That means these two lines are truly just intersecting. They're not really anything special. Okay? So using that as an idea, let's look down here at the bottom. And it's given you this box, and it says, given that this is the slope, what would be a slope that's parallel, and what would be a slope that's perpendicular? Well, remember, this means that they are the same. Perpendicular means that these are going to be the opposite flip, or negative reciprocal. So I'll do -4 because it's kind of one of the harder ones. So -4, it says a slope that is parallel. Well, that means it's the same. So if this is -4, then this is -4. But then it says a slope that's perpendicular. So I have to make it the opposite sign and then flip it over. The trouble is this doesn't really have the underneath. But I could rewrite this as -4/1. So now if I flip it over, boop, now it becomes 1/4. And then this one was negative, so that means this one has to be positive. So a slope parallel would be -4. A slope perpendicular would be positive 1/4. So now see if you could do the rest of those. On the back, it says now determine if the lines given are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Typically, your first step here would be to put equations into y equals. But in this case, in the notes, they're already all in y equals mx plus b, so you don't have any work to do there. So then your next step is going to be to compare them and see if they are the same. If they are the opposite flip, or remember they could multiply to -1, or if they're neither, which just means that they are intersecting. So remember, you're comparing the slopes, so this to this, and this to this, and this to this, and see what you come up with for those three answers. So now for the harder part, okay? This is how to find the equation of the line when they give you different information. Okay, super sorry, but if I don't go let my dog in, he's gonna go crazy and keep scratching at the door. So hold on just a couple seconds. Okay, so it says write the equation in slope-intercept form of a line that passes through the given point and is parallel to the given equation. So your first step here is going to be to put the equation that they give you into y equals format. So if we look at 5x minus 2y equals 8, the first thing that we have to do is move the x over to the other side. So if I do minus 5x minus 5x, these cancel. I now have negative 2y equals 8 minus 5x, and then I would have to divide by negative 2. And remember, we have to divide everything. So now these would cancel, and I would get y equals 8 divided by negative 2 would be negative 4, and then negative 5 divided by negative 2 would be positive 5 over 2x. So once we've put it into y equals, our second step is to pick out the slope. Well, if they're parallel, the slopes are going to be the same. So whatever the slope of this line is, our line should have that same slope. So the slope of this line is 5 over 2. That means the slope of our line would be 5 over 2. Then step 3 is whichever option you like. So I know some of you like the graphing option, some of you like to solve for b, but whatever it is, we need to find the y-intercept. So whichever method you want to use to do that is up to you. Okay, but what we have to do is go back and use this point. So let's do 2, 9 as the point, and the slope of 5 over 2. And I'm going to solve for b. So y is 9, and then that equals m, which is 5 over 2, and then that's times 2 plus b. So then 5 over 2 times 2 is 5, so I get 9 equals 5 plus b, and then I would subtract 5, and now b is 4. So now I have an m of 5 halves and a b of 4. So my equation, step 4, is y equals m, so 5 halves x, and then plus b, which is plus 4. So notice, once I got this in y equals and got the slope, I didn't use this equation again. I don't use this negative 4. I don't come back and look at this slope. I don't do anything with it. Okay? So now what I want to do is graph the two lines so that you can see that they are actually parallel. So let's start with this line, and I'll highlight this one in yellow. That way you guys know what you're comparing, and you might want to do the same so that when you bring me your notes, I know that you've done this. So we would go down to -4 and put a point. And then our slope is up 5 over 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2, sort of. And then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, left 2. So here's the equation of the line that they gave us. And it says that our line should be parallel to this line. So I'm going to highlight this one again in yellow so that we know kind of which one was the original line. And now let's graph our new line. So now I'm supposed to start at +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm supposed to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. Or down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, left 2. So now this is our new line. Well, if you notice, they are indeed parallel. So one way to actually find the new line is to go ahead and graph this point once you get the slope and make sure that they are parallel or perpendicular. Okay. All right, so let's look at perpendicular and what the difference is. So the steps are very much the same. It says write the equation of the line. Ooh, let me fold that in so it doesn't get confusing. There we go. Find the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that passes through the given point and is perpendicular to the graph given. So step 1 is still going to be the same thing. It would be to put the equation in y equals. Now, we got lucky in this case because this one already is in y equals. So we're going to go ahead and go to step 2, which is to pick out the slope. So in this case, the slope of this line is m equals 2/9. But this time, our line is perpendicular. Remember, that means we have to do the opposite flip from what they gave us. So 2/9, if I flip it over, boop, and then change the sign, our slope would be -9 over 2. So then 3 is to use the point that they gave you, so 6, -13, and the slope to solve for b. And again, there's multiple options. You could graph 6, -13 and then follow the slope and see if you can find the y-intercept, or you can use this point and get another point from the graph and put it in spreadsheet, or I'm going to show you the solve for b method. So that's where we plug in. So this is -13 is y equals -9 over 2. And then that's going to be times x, which is 6, and then plus b. So I don't have a calculator, so you'll have to give me just a second to process. To multiply 6 times -9/2, we would do 6 times 9, which is 54, divided by 2, which would be 27. So this would be -13 equals -27 plus b. And again, you guys have a calculator, so you would just plug in -9 over 2